So my name is William Tesser. I'm the president and CEO of Civic Financial Services, and I thought that this is probably the right time to have a brief overview over some of the changes that we've experienced in our lending space over the last 30 days. And thinking through that, maybe take 10 minutes and discuss like what the heck happened, who's been impacted by this, and most importantly, from my perspective, how are we here at Civic responding to that? This wasn't a credit crisis. The loans that we were all doing, all of us, with FICOs in and around the 700s and loan to values that were 75, 80%, that weighted average coupons in or around 8.5%, were still performing today, much like they were in January and February. This became truly a value of that loan crisis. And so what I mean by that specifically is I'll share numbers with you. So if you were doing $10 million in loans and you were doing them at that 8.5, 75, 80 LTV type of scenario, and you were doing those with the expectations that you could sell those loans on the secondary market for, let's say, 102 spot 5 or 102.5. To figure out the impact and what that means is you would take 2.5% times the 10 million, and that would give you an indication as a company what you could expect to get paid for producing those $10 million of loans. Not talking about points and fees, I'm talking about your back end revenue. And so as you're originating along doing that type of volume with the anticipation of selling that, one day somebody's Wall Street tells you that that loan pool that you were selling at 102 spot 5 is now worth somewhere in the mid 80s or low 90s. So if you just took a 90 number, then instead of getting $250,000, you're actually paying $1.2 million to the purchaser of those loans. So all of us should just say, well, hold on a second, that doesn't make sense. These are credit qualified borrowers. They perform like they've always performed. They've given no indication that they won't moving forward. What happened? And really this whole liquidity run and this resetting of what a loan is worth in a matter of really a 48-hour period left a whole bunch of companies that may not have been properly capitalized or levered a little bit too much, scrambling for like, what are they going to do tomorrow? And it's impacted our space in, a tremendous way. And so I look at it really in three different quadrants, right? So let's talk about quadrant one. Quadrant one are the companies that had margin calls, had strong liquidity or adequate liquidity positions. They met those margin calls, and then what they did was they reset their business model. They reset it in line with maybe lowering leverages, increasing interest rates, and maybe putting bumpers around their guidelines to make sure that their loans were marketable, at least at a position where they weren't losing money on the back end or secondary market until that side of our business right-sized. And a number of companies were able to do that and are doing that. And then I think you go into the second quadrant. And the second quadrant are those companies that are scrambling. They're scrambling to meet those calls, and they've put lending on either a temporary or some form of a permanent pause until they meet those. And many of us know who those companies are, and just from my seat, I'm rooting for every one of them to make it. And then I think the third is those companies that just were too levered or didn't have the liquidity, and we've seen mass layoffs, and they won't make those calls. And so those companies will disappear altogether. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. You're all watching this in the front row in real time with us, alongside us, watching companies that have been around in this space for an awful long time having challenges that they didn't plan for, didn't believe were going to show up on our front door overnight, and now we're left figuring out like what's next. For years, if you think about our business, our industry, it's really been a slow deterioration of loan to value, right? And if you go back to the Ames Home Loan days, those guys were, that was 50% LTV. And through time and through volume and through market activity, those leverages have been pushed up higher and higher and higher and higher. And at Civic, we went as high as 80%, and some of our competitors out there as high as 90. So the market pushed and our industry responded. And then same thing with rates. Rates were, 12 to 15% back in the Ames days. And those have also migrated to single digits throughout the nation. And then you think about fee compression and a whole bunch of other things. And it really kind of was a slow deterioration of the industry and the business to a point where you start looking at the risk associated with the paper that's being written, and it would take an event, such as this to really recapture that back. And here's my truth. My truth is overnight, LTVs have dropped 10%. Overnight, your weighted average coupon has gone up over 200%. And then with the guardrails we talked about earlier, I think the quality of paper for the companies that prevail through this market shift is going to be better than Wall Street has ever seen in this space in many, many years. So you think about really what has Civic done and how are we responding, or how have we reacted to the changes in the marketplace? And I think about it really in three different scenarios. First one is our people, right? So how do we get our people working from home? What was our business continuity plan, and how was that going to operate? And what I could tell you all for the last month is 290 of our 310 employees are working from home with monitors and screens, and doing so efficiently and effectively, and it really blown me away, and actually blown our customers away. We recently received the highest NPS score that Civic has ever achieved in all the years that we've been monitoring customer surveys. And I mean, I think that says a lot, especially in the tough period of time that we're all living and operating in. Two, what was most important for me was to make sure that any forward commitments we had in our loan portfolios was honored by our capital partners. And I'm happy to tell you that they all were honored, and actually ended up putting Civic in a tremendous position to not have to meet huge liquidity and margin calls that affected so many within our industry. And I'm grateful for that. And then lastly was to make sure that we reset the loans we were doing today to make sure they were in alignment with values paid on the secondary market today, COVID time, right? And so if that meant upping rates, we upped rates. If that meant lowering leverages, we lowered leverages. And then we put some bumpers on our guidelines just to make sure that that we were not just in alignment, but we were partnering with people that are telling us what true price is on loans that we're doing today in the month of April. So what I think about as it relates to Civic is really broken down into position, products, and people. Position, it's important for you to know that we are a very well capitalized company. Believe the run rate for the next quarter will be in or around $100 million. And product-wise, that $100 million will be based mostly on bridge, fix and flip, and rental, with some multi as we work on a longer-term bridge solution to that space. And then our people, we mentioned earlier, we're 300 people strong, and we're here to serve, not just the way we served before, but the way we serve during and post-COVID. Here's what I would say. I get that this is scary and uncertain times for all of us. And I want you to know that I'm 34 years in this space. I've been through the Resolution Trust Corp. I've been through earthquakes. I've been through wars, the financial crisis, and I'm living now through COVID. What I would tell you is I've never been more confident, comfortable, and enthusiastic about what our space looks like coming out of this time. What's important before I leave is that you understand that Civic is your lending partner. We continue to operate in this space uninterrupted. I'm proud of our operations for allowing us to do such. We're 100% focused on commitment and quality and our community. And this is our civic duty. I wish each and every one of you continued health and prosperity as we work through COVID-19, and know that Civic is here alongside you. Thank you.